Okay. As you know, there's quite a lot of marketers in the room today. Some brand, some Dior. For the brand guys, can you tell me how the automated channel is going to help brand advertisers? And I'll give that to Bruce in the first instance.
I think it's one of the great opportunities, as Brian O'Kelly was saying earlier, to bring additional money into the space. We see brand marketers as very skeptical about the value of digital, and we have taken some of the decisioning capability that we have underlying our system to be able to optimize toward positive brand sentiment. We think it's the tip of the iceberg, but when you look at the capabilities in digital from not only display but in mobile and in video and in social, you have enormous opportunities for brand. We have a DX social product now that is a CEO says to a CMO, we need more likes. We've got to have more likes. I want 500,000 likes by the end of the month. And there are those kinds of capabilities. But, proving the value of brand and improving positive sentiment is a challenge for all of us in this space.
Nathan, how's RTB going to help the brand advertisers?
Ultimately, I've said this before. It's a lot of people look at the RTB space and they talk about mostly the value of the auction or the exchange, and it's a nice hook because the inventory is cheap, right? And so that's why I think we've seen a lot of DR advertisers move to the space. But ultimately, I think the two biggest benefits of RTB are the transparency and control that it gives to advertisers. That on not all the impressions, but maybe about 60-70% of the impressions, or the big call-outs, you do see the full URL, right? And if you can see the full URL and you know information about the URL, Pier 39 is what they specialize in. We have our own product that looks at the URL and understands information about it. And when you know if it's a good advertising environment or a good advertising experience, then you can discern from, should a branded advertiser place their ad in that slot or not. So ultimately, the transparency is what I see as the #1 benefit to a branded advertiser in this space.
So Richard, you represent Ford. You're looking at this space. You look at RTB. You're not doing much of it at the minute. So what's the hook for you? Is it transparency? Is it efficiency? What would be the key?
I guess if you think of it as a top trumps card, and brand marketers like to think simple, so let's look at it like that. You've got scale and you've got low pricing. So those things are, or in theory, it should cost less than what it cost me elsewhere to buy it. But at the moment, there's some real critical weaknesses in this space. I'd try to act a little bit like a sort of translation layer between this world and the world my clients live in, which is far slower and far bigger budgets, actually. And at the moment, it's so complex and so difficult to understand. Our clients aren't biting. So we can start to talk to some of the more digital-centric and DR-centric clients about this sort of thing. But when you talk to the brand guys that spend, tens of millions of pounds a year on TV advertising, this stuff isn't moving their needle at the moment. And that, it seems to me, to be a real shortcoming. There's a massive opportunity, but I think we need to change the way we present this industry to those group of people.
Is there a disconnect there, Andy, between what we do and what the marketers do?
Well, I think it's happening.
We live in a bubble.
Perhaps, but I think it's happening, and I think it's coming. I think the TV example is a good one. One of the knocks with online display in general, whether it's RTB or directly sold, was always relative to TV. The TV buyer would say, the crusty TV buyer would say, hey, with one phone call, I can reach every household I want to. One of the things that I think is so tremendously exciting about the marketplaces is the fact that there is so much scale there. And there's some great audience data out there, but to Nate's point, when you know the URL, you know about the relevancy, you know about the environment, combined with the efficiency and scale, then all of a sudden this becomes a very, very attractive medium for those brand spenders.
And Alex, so you see, when you talk to marketers, what are they seeing in this space? Do they see opportunity, or is it just confusion?
Well, I think people have been going on about mobile advertising for years because it's a no-brainer. It's personal, you have it with you the whole time. It's the glue that binds between the poster, the TV, the PC. But the infrastructure just has been appalling. It took Apple to create an ecosystem where you could actually place ads and track them in any way at all. But still, the mobile phone is a device. It's not a person. You don't know who they are. It's just a device, and you're targeting a BlackBerry or an iPhone. And until we can start getting some of that rich data from the PC across to the mobile device, then of course it's a fantastic medium, and that's just starting.
Okay. We we've heard some news today about High Media, and obviously AppNexus have partnered with Microsoft in the space. Do you think there's enough brand safe inventory now in the automated channel to make campaigns, brand campaigns work? Are the private exchanges going to give the brand advertisers the opportunity to run these campaigns? I mean, what's your take on it, Nathan?
We all know that the scale's there, right? But if you look at, it's not just brand safe. I mean, there's two things. There's brand safety, but I think when a brand advertiser looks at a page, it's not necessarily just, is it, hate, violence, porn. It's not necessarily that it's just brand safe. It's, is it a good advertising environment? And I think what we see right now, in I'd say the majority of the exchange space, is that the advertising environment is not good. It's not quality. I mean, we did our own analysis and study of about 20 million URLs, and we found that if you wanted to cut out all the pages that had fewer than 5 ads on them, you'd cut out half the entire inventory.
Yeah, I see something differently. We're looking at 10+ billion impressions in a given day, and I'd agree that something like safety is a very subjective term when you remove the concept of porn or hate speech or torrent. But liquor is safe for one and not safe for another. So we see a ton of really quality inventory out there, and not just, again, from safety, but whether it's the type of page structure. Is the impression UGC? Is it coming from a toolbar? Is it coming from a content-rich page? There's plenty of that inventory out there. I think the trick is being able to find it.
So I mean, we were obsessed with audience buying. You think that the environment and context are becoming almost crucial variables as we go forward, bringing brand into this space? Is that something you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about direct response advertising, then that user can become paramount. But and the user is important to the brand advertisers as well. But there's plenty of instances and plenty of the impressions in the marketplaces where that cookie isn't present.
Yeah.
So how do you make a determination on quality and safety at that point? And that's where the URL does come into play in a very significant way.
And one of the things that we do in addition to that is we take a look at the context through a semantic analysis that we look at each page and determine whether that's safe as well. And I think that to the question of scale, there's certainly enough inventory available. We're doing some branded campaigns now with a very large partner that is optimizing toward positive brand sentiment. And when Joe Zawadzki talked about bringing optimization into the mix, we're now applying optimization to brand efficiency. And so I think there's an enormous opportunity there in not only just display, but in mobile and video as well.
This is a question for Richard. I mean, you deal with Ford, and when Ford looks at a website and they see 5 ad units, and they say, what's this going to do for my brand? Do you think the way that we are obsessed by multiple impressions and not looking at sort of the impact of the ad is affecting the way that we spend money in this channel?
Yeah, I mean, I think that most brand advertisers would have already left the room by this point.
There's a few here, I think.
But, the conversation about brand safety shouldn't be an issue. It should just be a given. We shouldn't have to worry about it in the same way we shouldn't have to worry about half of these things as brand advertisers, because it's not necessary in other channels. And if you want to try to steal share from those channels, you need to be at least par with them. I think it's interesting to look at positive brand sentiment, but it would be interesting to compare the cycles of positive brand sentiment, because we can all say after 6 minutes or 72 hours there's been a slight uptick in awareness, but my cycle is 3, 6, 12 months. That's how you change a brand's perception. It's not about what you saw 30 seconds ago. And to build that slow data into the incredibly fast data that we see in the automated space is going to be the hardest challenge. To actually use equivalent currency of brand tracking, proper brand tracking, not pop-up based or web-based tracking, is going to be one of the keys to unlocking this. It doesn't wash at the moment. It doesn't wash to say that this ad unit worked marginally better 2 hours ago, and that's a massive disincentive to spend.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that the notion of actionable analytics is something that I think is really key as we can do that in the digital space, because brand metrics do take so long to track. And
Do we have the metrics wrong for display? I mean, if we're talking about bringing all this spend into display, and we're still working to a last click opposed to attribution?
Before we even go there, right? Before we even go to attribution or chasing pixels or cookie bombing or anything like that, it really comes down to, what's the consumer experience online? What's the consumer experience at Yahoo versus what's the consumer experience for some long tail that you buy in Google AdX? And I'd contend that we haven't done a good job as an industry. Yeah, and so, because if you think of it this way, right? If you are a mid to long tail publisher, where a lot of the inventory is coming from, and nobody's monitoring how many ads you put on a page, right? So you put up one ad, you make $1. You put up 2 ads, you make $2. You put up 3 ads, you make $3. And nobody knows, because everyone's out there buying an audience, and no one's paying attention to the environment. So that means that the environment has an incentive to be a horrible advertising experience. So you really...
But if you do know that, then you can make a value judgment from a bidding
Correct.
Perspective. So if that data is available and becomes transparent, it's available in a premium direct type sale. It will be available in these marketplaces. And that page and everything else about that page and maybe even about that user might be extraordinarily valuable to a potential brand buyer. And the key for them is to know what elements they want to value their bid based on. So at the right price, it might be a perfect brand environment.
I think there's a piece missing to that, in that we're still talking about website to website at the heart of this. We're talking about this page is better than that page, this context is better than that page. I make channel decisions. I decide whether or not money goes into TV, radio, outdoor, or online. I happen to be an online specialist, but I work across all of them. And I don't need to know, really, that one page is better than another. I need to know that when I put money into the internet, it is more effective at moving my brand needle than TV. And at the moment, all I get back is a spreadsheet that tells me maybe. And that's just that's not ever going to unlock the money that's there. And actually what's interesting is, again, something that's not been talked about in detail here, social media has done it really, really well. You look at the investment that Diageo made last night in Facebook, you look at the investment Ford makes in Facebook, hundreds of millions of dollars on not very much evidence. And the reason is it's easy to understand. And there is a real appetite to innovate and to reach new audiences. But the more complicated it gets, the more risk strewn it gets, people walk away.